Hello, everyone. Um, welcome. We will just wait while while people join online. I can see people coming in. Thank you very much for joining us. Uh, this bit's always awkward, so awkward, in fact, that Kwan Ann accepted my offer for her to put her camera off and not hang around, which I fully respect. Um, Absolutely, but we'll just wait a minute or two then. Um, Thank you, June. You've jumped ahead of me. I was going to say, do say hello in the chat box. Tell us where you're watching from. Always really nice to get a sense of who's here and where you are in the world, especially with Kwan Ann being an international author. Uh, and use the chat box throughout as well to show your appreciation. There are little reaction buttons as well. Uh, and ask us some questions. So there's a Q&A function. I will try and be across that as well, but the chat box is great. I can scroll up and down it. We're going to hear readings from Kwan Ann, and I have some questions for her too, of course, to start the conversation. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you and hear your questions on the kind of huge range of themes that we encounter in this small, experimental, and brilliant book. So yes, please do drop them in as you think of them. Hello from Manchester via Malaysia. Um, Very nice. Welcome. Um, Looks like people have slowed down entering. I'm going to switch off my email so you don't get any more of those sounds. But I think that was just an order for the waiter, so that's nice. We start as we mean to go on. I will just officially welcome you then to the launch of the Waiter debut novel by Kwan Ann Tan on publication day itself, which is always really nice to do. My name's James. I'm the director of the Emma Press. I was also one of the editors of this book, so really nice to join you tonight. In case you don't know about us, we are based in Birmingham in the UK. We publish poetry and prose, and we were founded in 2010 by Emma Diane Wright with a mission, I guess, to make literature and publishing as welcoming and as accessible as possible, which we still hope that we do. We have open submissions twice a year, if any of you are writers. We publish about 8 books a year, for adults and for children. 2025, however, has been quite a special year for us. It has marked our first steps into publishing novels, full-length novella fiction. We released, let's have one here. In April, we released our first, a translation called Wild Boar by Hannah Lutz, translated from Swedish. I'm delighted to say that The Waiter isn't just Kwan Ann's debut, it is also our first English language original novel. So we bravely step towards the mouth of that particular moor together, which is a neat segue onto the themes of this book. The allusion to the moors, if you've already read it, you will recognize, and you might also deduce from this fantastic cover by Mark Andrew Webber, that is an aspect of the book. I'm sure Kwan Ann will introduce it better than me, but from our point of view, I should say The Waiter is set in a kind of near future London, London that's beset by moors that open up in the ground and swallow buildings and roads and people whole. We know that there are sort of variously things to be avoided, to be studied, to be cared for and worshipped across the multiple stories in this book. And which, of course, if our shouting about it hasn't got the message across yet, this is an interactive book where you, the reader, choose the next step for the protagonist. And that protagonist is a waiter, not in the traditional sense, but in this speculative world, a service industry where people can be hired to wait on your behalf, like queuing for tickets or stirring your soup. And it is that kind of amazing and brilliantly imagined setting and character and world building and experimental format that drew us to Kwan Ann's manuscript and writing. I'm very excited to be publishing it today and to hear from the author. So yes, delighted to say Kwan Ann is of course here. She's going to read from the book over the next 40 minutes or so, and answer any questions you have, as I say. I think, Kwan Ann, you were going to maybe read from the book's opening to give a sense of the character of the waiter and London that they inhabit. First, I wonder if you might maybe say a little bit about the origin of the story. Um, oh, and firstly, congratulations as well, and thank you for trusting us with your time. We always like to say, and for your debut book, that's yeah, we really appreciate you trusting us. But yeah, could you tell us what the initial inspiration from this for the story and where that came from?
Yeah, thanks, James. You guys actually really like one thing that I really enjoyed about working with the Emma Press is that you guys really you understood the story almost immediately, and that's reflected in like the blurb, everything that we've done so far. So yeah, it's been a really great experience. The inspiration, I guess, like behind this was that um, this was actually the first sort of like interactive piece that I ever wrote, really. Um, I had always kind of like been interested in interactive fiction, but mostly online. I played some choose your own adventure stories at the beginning, as a kid and stuff, but they always kind of like frustrated me, in a sense because they were always like, "Oh, you have died," or you know, something that's like unsatisfying in terms of like making the choices matter in a sense. Um, so with this one, I was like, I kind of took it as an opportunity to kind of like explore like an idea rather than, tell a story that like makes sense if that makes any sense, I guess. So yeah, I'll just read a little bit from the beginning of the book and we can dive in.
Take it away.
You you are surrounded by warmth. It envelopes you, brushing softly against your cheek and wrapping around your limbs, soaking into your bones. Something jostles against you, shaking loose your consciousness, which rises to the surface of your mind. You fight to stay under a little longer. A brightness flickers behind your eyelids, throwing purple veins into relief. You've closed your eyes to block out the harsh white lights, but they're still sore. You blink to try and acclimatize to your environment. The lights flicker again. Your body sways from side to side with the rocking of the carriage. A slow, throbbing ache spreads from your side to your neck. You recall the last proper bed you slept in, remembering its softness and support. At this point, it would be easier to list the muscles that don't ache. You've lost track of how many journeys you've taken in the last week alone. Your body is melded to the seat, matted fabric rubbing against the back of your shirt, a layer of humidity coating your skin like slime. The train jerks you to the left, and your ears are filled with the screech of metal. You murmur an apology into the shoulder of the person next to you. You look up to check which station you've stopped at, the door sliding open to let passengers on and off. You've only made it 2 stops from Heathrow. Not very far at all. A faint wave of heat wafts in through the doors as the commuters swarm in. The morning rush is just beginning. Someone starts playing a video out loud, so there's no chance of catching any more sleep. Another person asks you to move your suitcase so they can stand in the aisle, so you pull it between your legs. Holding it there as the carriage rocks back and forth is like trying to wrestle a horse into submission. You feel guilty for taking up so much space when the tube is at its busiest, but you're working too, and it's a long way to your destination. The train scrapes past a patch of electricity, and the carriage holds its breath. A great shuddering comes from the tunnel, sparking and twitching. You stare out of the window. Darkness yawns and you flinch. This isn't the first time you've encountered a mole while on the tube, but you'll probably never get used to it. The feeling is like a finger dragging down your spine. You scrunch yourself into a ball, putting your feet up on the seat and burying your face in your knees. The passenger opposite you is completely oblivious to what's behind them, their face lit up by their phone. The company says they found you by the entrance of one of these malls, these gaping holes that appear and disappear around London and many other parts of the world. No one knows how or why they form, but they seem to manifest wherever will cause the most chaos, swallowing whatever lies in their path. Roads, buildings, people. Above ground, the malls look like gigantic mouths gasping for air. Down here, they are large sacs dropped into the earth, and when the tube grazes the delicate membrane of one of these sacs, it shudders. You squeeze your eyes even more tightly shut. You can't remember first hearing about the malls because you don't remember anything about yourself. When you were found, you were naked except for your hair, which was so long it was wrapped around your body like a cocoon and had to be shaved off. The company offered to try and help you recover your memories, but the process wouldn't be cheap. Don't worry about all that now, the company representative said. They arrived shortly after you woke up and took you through a long list of terms of employment. You'd be able to unlock some benefits once you completed enough jobs. 1 year on, you haven't even made enough money to move out of company accommodation, let alone save for memory retrieval. You often wonder what kind of life you previously led. Is anyone missing you? Have you always been alone? Your job with the company at least allows you to slip into other people's lives and see if anything feels familiar. The lights in the carriage flicker off. There's a chorus of gasps, then everyone holds their breath. More issues are unheard of underground, but there's a first time for everything. You feel yourself float, gravitating towards more. At times like this, the company therapist recommends that you list 3 things about yourself to remind yourself of who you are. You tap your fingers together, thumb to index, thumb to middle, ring, and littlest. 1. You are wearing shoes from the company donation box. They are slightly loose, but you've tied the laces as tightly as they will go, and you can feel your pulse throbbing in them if you concentrate hard enough. You wear the regulation uniform, but the company doesn't stipulate what shoes you must wear, only that they allow you to walk fast and stand for a long time. 2. You got a haircut last week at the company hairdresser's. It's a short bob that tickles your chin, one of the 3 styles offered at your current rank. Although the 2 other options had more flair, they didn't feel like you. This one does. 3. You are a waiter. That's what the company calls its employees. You can be hired by the hour to wait. This includes queuing for the latest releases of a game, gadget, or other in-demand object, waiting outside someone's house to receive a delivery, watching a load at the laundrette, and taking luggage to hotels for tourists, freeing up their time for meetings or sightseeing. Case in point, the suitcase currently between your legs. I'll leave it there.
Ooh. I'll give you some uh, mini in-person claps. There were reaction boxes as well, which have been pressing. Thank you so much for that. I was just telling Kwan Ann that I've been listening to the audiobook version of The Waiter, which is our first ever audiobook and really exciting. All day for kind of post-production quality control. And yeah, so it was really, really nice to hear in your voice. Not that the actor isn't fantastic, but yeah, lovely to hear this in your voice. And I think that opening, I think we get a sense of some of the really compelling themes of this book. You get like the threat of the Moors and that kind of faceless, manipulative company and the world in which they can exist. And of course, the city, uh, which I wanted to ask about. I didn't read out your autobiography, perhaps I should, but those people who don't know, you're from Malaysia originally, grew up there, but lived in London for a few years. I love how kind of vividly the tube and later in the book, the kind of rest of London is captured. Um, I definitely think a lot of people probably can, a lot of money saving people like myself can empathize with that horrendous Piccadilly line train, tube train from Heathrow
Yeah,
into
for
Central.
sure. That's a specific one that I was thinking of as well. Like that like Piccadilly line like really early in the morning and it's like people are like piling on and it's so hot and so busy.
Yeah, and normally you're sort of exhausted from a flight and you're feeling like really, and maybe I should have paid £26 or something for a speedy train, but I didn't.
Yeah, and it's like it's always like you're always like coated in like grime or like you feel so sticky when you get off a flight. I don't know if that's just me, but yeah, it's like oh
Yeah, no, no, I completely agree. And so, was the book always going to be set in London? I think you said to me once that that kind of a particular instance on the underground was a kind of seed for an early part of the writing. But yeah, was the book always going to be set in London? And are you writing your experience of the city that you've lived in, or did you kind of feel like you went out and researched more?
yeah, I think it's a little bit of like experience and things like that more so and yeah, it was always going to be set in London because I think the experience of public transport here at least is like so kind of specific, especially on like specific lines and things like that. Like, you get a very distinct sense when you're like sitting on all of them, even the colors, the different times that they're busy and so on and so forth. And yeah, I guess it was really kind of based on just like exploring London, like especially when I first moved here. You were like, oh, something in South London. Yeah, I can travel like 1.5 hours to like, go and see what it's like or something like that. So it's very much like based on like those kind of like little trips and just like explorations of London, as well as like some childhood memories as well, to be fair. Like because I spent a little bit of time here as a child, like going to school, and I have like quite vivid memories, especially scents for some reason. Like sometimes like you'll smell something and then you'll be like, oh, that really reminded me of something when I was a kid or whatever. So yeah, it's a little bit of like all of those things kind of combined into one.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, yeah, you remind me there's a lot of travel in the book, I guess. There's buses and there's taxis and there's underground and there, yeah, it has that kind of magical sense of what else the underground, particularly like what else is
Yeah,
underground.
like what it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens if you jump down and walked on a little bit down those tunnels? Don't recommend
Yeah.
it.
But they're always saying, well, not always saying, but like there's always stuff about how, ooh, this like unused tube station that people no longer use, and then, there are people who like what are they called? Like spelunkers or like urban explorers, and then,
Mm,
they're taking photos and all that stuff. So yeah, a little bit of that as well, I guess.
yeah. Is it the one on the Strand or Aldwych? I can't remember. That they use for sort of filming stuff. But
Yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure.
well, maybe this book can be your passport into getting a ticket into
Yes,
going down.
TFL sponsor
Yeah,
this book.
yeah. We'll send it to Sadiq Khan. Don't worry. Um, and obviously you introduced the waiter there as well, and uh, what a waiter is, and his idea of a job role for the future, perhaps the present as well. I feel um, there's probably things like that that maybe exist already. Um,
Mm,
I guess there's quite a prevalent theme as well of sort of linked to that, the kind of class and consumerism in the book, that those who can afford it can pay for a waiter to do the things they don't have time or energy for. And then the waiters are like generally pictured as kind of stripped of their identity, very much so in the protagonist's case because they can't remember who they are. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, what kind of attracted you to writing that? I suppose it's kind of one of the like work dystopia that kind of is really
mhm.
kind of archetypal in that
Yeah,
genre.
that kind of like yeah, exactly. It's like kind of like that faceless dystopia. I guess I mean it's based on the idea that like there are some jobs that are basically like bullshit jobs. Like there's a whole book about it that basically talks about how there are the people whose jobs it literally is to bring Lime bikes or like whatever to like one place, or it's those kinds of like invisible work that uh aren't really kind of like considered jobs, but somebody has to do them, right? That and also like considering like the physicality of like those kinds of jobs, like, I haven't really experienced that myself, but it's having had some experience with like freelance and like really like short order jobs where it's like it's never ending, like there's a faceless corporation that's like giving you all of this stuff, and then all you have to do is kind of like respond or like churn out to it. You're held to like certain metrics and things like that. Um, yeah, I was kind of like thinking of a little bit of all of that, as well as like what would it be like to, have a job where it's literally like the only thing that is worth anything is the time that you can give in replacing somebody else's time, you know.
Mm. Yeah,
So that's kind of like the seed of the book. Um,
yeah.
Also because I was, riding the tube up and down to the airport and was like, oh, this is like taking so long.
Well, it's a lovely sort of idea that, especially reading and thinking so much about AI now. And there are
Mhm.
parallels here, of course, and the way that um,
I guess in a real dystopia, there wouldn't really be a person though. It would be an AI like doing
well,
it.
yeah, but then maybe that is the thing that you can't actually replace, and our most valuable commodity as human people is our time and ability to do things on people's behalfs.
Mhm.
Uh, and before I ask you to read again, I think if we're touching on all the big things about this book, you sort of already broached the fact that it's interactive, and that's and where you got it from, uh, your inspiration there. I was wondering, as a writer, I'm sure there might be other writers in the chat and room as well. Uh, how how would you go about it? How do you approach writing something with multiple strands to it? Is there a technique or an enormous document, or yeah, how do you keep it all together?
Yeah, I mean like it was so well, it was like kind of a few parts. The first thing I tried was like writing it out by hand, and then I was like, oh, this is gonna be impossible to like keep track of all the stuff. Then it went to flashcards because like that is like, you can just kind of like swap it out and put it wherever you want. So actually when I was writing or like outlining this book, there was one wall in my parents' house which was like covered in flashcards as I was like trying to like mind map this entire thing out. I think I have a picture somewhere, but I couldn't find it in time for this event, so maybe next time. But yeah, it looks kind of crazy with all of the different colors and such. But also there's this really helpful software which is designed for interactive fiction like this, which is called Twine. And with that, it's actually like it not only like helps you create the game through links and some such, but like you can actually kind of like, arrange things very easily digitally, so you don't really have to like have the physical aspect. So yeah, I think like for like the specific plot of the story though, it was kind of like, okay, so I know that the waiter like wants to travel on this tube, the first job, and it's like, what are the two ways in which like what are the choices or like that the waiter could make while they're sitting here? And that kind of like, branched on and so forth at every place. It's like, what choice do you give the reader that is like the most meaningful, or it feels like this could actually change the story in some way,
Mhm.
rather than just being like, oh, you chose the wrong path. It has to be
Yeah,
like there's something here for you to show that it's like a full kind of like narrative.
yeah, you definitely have that. I'd completely forgotten that it's sort of from like maybe like Goosebumpsy kind of books that sometimes, yeah, you just turn the page and it's like, no, you chose the wrong one. You've been eaten by a bear or something.
Yeah, and how unsatisfying is that, right? It's like okay, then I'll just go back, and that means makes the
Yeah.
choice meaningless, essentially.
And can I drill a bit further into the process? Because I'm kind of fascinated. Did you, when you branched off in your writing, did you then see that story through, and every time you branched, just continue on with that branch? So you kind of write one whole narrative first, and then go back to see where you could have deviated and what might have happened, or was it a bit
Well,
more
well,
unexpected?
no, actually. So it was more like I think like figuring out where to branch is like the most important part because otherwise you end up with something that's like so big and so unmanageable. So you kind of want to like make sure that it stays so otherwise you'd end up with like 100,000 words kind of like possibilities of branches. So actually, oh, one thing I forgot is that I did have some endings in mind. So it was more about like figuring out where to branch to get to those endings. Yeah, because as you know, I think it was like, what was it, like 12 or 13 kind of endings at the beginning before we started editing it. And then obviously we cut some of those, but it was like those endings were kind of like working backwards and figuring
Yeah,
that out.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Kwan Ann's written a blog for our website, which is sort of about some of the inspiration and some of the writing. We'll touch on a bit here, but not all of it. One thing I needed to ask, because the maths defeated us, I'm afraid. You said, I think he asked Ella, our trainee, if she could check the maths, and we were all just, let's just put it through because we don't know. But yeah, you suggested there could be 39 million combinations of journeys. What was your, how did you work that out?
Well, okay, again, math is really not my strong suit. And I think some people in the
That's
chat
a
are gonna
line.
laugh
Uh,
at my math. But it's so if I'm right, it should be that if you're reading it completely like from the top to the end of one narrative with, entirely, then it should be you would get like you had 11 choices on your first try, then you cut out one, so then it would be 10, then 9, 8. So then it would just be 11 to the part, like, yeah, exclamation? I don't know.
that sounds plausible. Yeah, that sounds right. If there's any mathematicians in the room who could work that out for us, um, but I'm going with it. Uh, there are infinite
It sounds
possibilities.
impressive, if nothing
Yeah, it
else,
does.
if not correct.
And also, there's a real joy in because a lot of these are quite well. It's not a huge book, is it? Well, I can't remember where we are with words in the end, but yeah, only sort of 120 pages and 11 stories. Um, so yeah, one of the real joys is kind of the almost immediate dip back to be like, oh no, maybe I should have gone. What would have happened if I went into the room or took the next job or etc. etc. Um, would you would you like to read again? Is there another passage?
Yes, but
Read.
before we go on to that, it was really interesting, like, um, what you said because it's like, going back and all that stuff. Because I find it so interesting, like how people are reading it.
Mm,
Um, my dad messaged me this morning. He was like, oh, maybe you should put the page numbers where you came from, on the pages that you arrive at." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes so much sense." And then he's been like penciling in the page number that he came from. So I asked him to take a picture and send it to me because
that's
I find
great.
that like it's really interesting. And then other people have been using like sticky tabs or like things like that. So that's been really cool. My sister just read it from beginning to end without flipping through any of the pages, which I'm sure she got a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's one way. That's one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, she said that it was like distinct enough that she could remember the threads from before, but
Wow.
that's one way of doing it.
Maybe she encountered the big thing you had in your parents' house and just
Yeah,
it
that's
locked
true.
in somewhere. We toyed with your dad's idea of putting the you came from here at the top of the page, and then as we went on, realized there's a couple of ways you might have come here, and I think it ended up being
Mm.
messy. So we leave it to readers, and if anyone has any feedback or is finding that reading it in a certain way, then let us know. And
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see how people are reading it as well, so let us know.
yeah,
Okay, I think I'll maybe read from another little bit.
please do.
Okay. So the part that I'm gonna read from is when the waiter is sort of like in a job and is sort of like has sort of decided to go against their job, which is delivering the suitcase. And they've decided to almost take on the owner of the suitcase's persona. So I'll just read a little bit from that. And this is a dream that they're having. You're in a seaside villa. Moonlight streams in through the windows, a light breeze fluttering the curtains. Elle is there, a shadow behind a curtain. You wipe the sleep from your eyes and prop yourself up to watch her. She turns when she hears you stir. Come, she says. Look. You walk over and stand behind her, burying your face in the warm mass of her hair. She points, and you follow the line of her finger into the ocean. Although it's dark outside, you see it at once. The pulsing mass in the ocean, the churning froth. A maw has opened in the seabed, slurping the water down its throat. The ocean turned into a whirlpool as it drains into the center of the earth. I saw a ship disappear, Elle says. It tried to fight the drag, but it was sucked down. Someone jumped out before it went down, like he wanted to be judged separately from the rest. You bury your nose in her neck, drawing in the scent of jasmine. She starts to turn in your arms to kiss you, and you desperately want to see her face. But your consciousness is pulling you out of the dream. You fight to stay down. You want to stay here, with Elle. Blink. Wake. The room is dark. What time is it? 8 p.m., apparently. You jolt upright. The suitcase owner's clothes are heavily creased and the sheets rumpled. Your phone is fully charged and the screen is flooded with messages from your supervisor. You've been offline for more than an hour. No, 2 hours. No, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. An emergency alert that you're about to drop ranks. Another that your contract has been terminated and you should contact your supervisor. A notification that the remainder of your debt has been called in, and a request for for details of your payment schedule. A news flash that a mall has opened up in Trafalgar Square, and a reminder to change routes. A list of underground lines that are delayed or closed completely. All you can think about is that Elle will be at the rooftop bar in an hour. And that's the next bit.
You realized I should have checked before how many bits that we were going to read, but it'd be great if you had one more reading afterwards. Is that throwing you on?
Yeah,
I'll carry
I've
on.
got
I'm
one
gonna
more.
got a few more questions, but maybe we'll come back to a final passage. And please, this is also your kind of your chance in the chat. If you have any questions about the book or Kwan Ann or the writing, please do. Micah is straight in with one, so I'll do that, superseding my question. Did you encounter any challenges in writing your interactive question?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the question. I think it was kind of difficult to make sure that the world was like consistent or like, branches didn't like contradict each other. I think that was also like quite a struggle that well, we were in the trenches while we were editing it, but it was like, oh, if this action, does it contradict what the waiter has said previously? Is the internal logic like consistent for like all of the different strands? So yeah, I think consistency is probably more difficult than most with interactive novel because all of the strands have to come together in the end.
Yeah, it's amazing. That was the sort of my first edit. Emma did the line edits, but mine kind of more structural edit. I remember one being like, "Man, I don't think they went to the donut shop in
Yeah,
this story, but they've suddenly got a donut in their hand or something."
yeah,
Something
exactly. It's
as
like
silly as that to
leaking in.
to really big things. So yeah, really fascinating. One other thing that came up in editing, and I'm glad you read that with that bit, or for me when I was reading it at least, it's that kind of very prevalent theme of multiple lives and the choices we make. Um, uh, and I guess there's also a sort of sense that some choices we make in a parallel world, uh, we could have been enacting that choice. It kind of reminded me a lot of Everything Everywhere All at Once as well, the film, which is no bad thing in that kind of multiple things happening at the same time.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated. Like, did that theme naturally emerge in the writing of these multiple stories, or was that kind of something you wanted to set out to write about at the start?
I think it kind of naturally emerged because the first branch that I worked on was actually the notebook branch. And then I was like, had this really, well, I mean, I don't know how many spoilers I'm gonna give to people who are reading, who might read it, but hopefully you'll forget. Um, it was kind of like that sense of like, oh, how are we gonna figure out that, how or like how is the waiter gonna see themselves in this person? Are they gonna be, are they gonna be physically similar? What's the kind of story that, and then it kind of evolved because the waiter as somebody who's like lost their memory. And then it's like when you are a blank slate like that, how do you imagine or like how do you interact with people? Because perhaps you're like constantly trying to like see a little bit of yourself or like imagine yourself in their shoes, kind of thing. So like that was like one of the main ideas that I was playing with. And then there was this idea of like the malls being a sense of like renewal. They can represent like loads of things and they're supposed to. But like the sense of renewal and like being like given another chance because of this like mysterious sort of like you reappear next to one kind of thing. So it's like, have you been in there before? What's the kind of like story, connected to them? So yeah, and it was also just quite like fun to like make up the mystery, even if there's no real answer.
No spoilers.
Yeah.
um, we got a few questions come through, and predictably uh, the interactive nature is the thing that people are interested in, as were we. Rosemary's asking, were there any interactive books that you consulted while writing?
Books. So, there's this like really interesting book called Crossings by I think Alex Landegren. I'm not sure if I've got the name like completely right, but actually what he has done, or what they have done is kind of like written the story so that it can be read linearly entirely, but you can also flip to the different pages to read them from like in a different order. And that's like a stroke of genius that I was like, that's impossible. Like, that's so cool. So that was like one thing that I was reading. And another thing that was kind of exploring at the time was Kane's Jawbone, which is like this really difficult puzzle that, people haven't been able to solve, or like people have solved it, but it's just an incredibly difficult sort of like prose puzzle where you have to solve a murder mystery and it's like told through different pages in a book. So, when a reader would have gotten it in like 1921, they would have had to, flip through and like piece the different like puzzles of pages together through that. And recently they came out with a edition that where all of the pages are printed on cards, so you can actually like reshuffle them. So, I was thinking a little bit about that as well. But a lot of the inspiration comes from interactive fiction that is online, actually. And there's like a huge world out there of interactive fiction that is free to play. They have incredible narratives, so much experimental stuff is going on in that space. It's super cool. So I don't think I can name everything, but maybe in the future, a blog post with the links to like loads of different stuff. We'll see.
And now I'm recalling Twine because yeah, I think I did um, I know I did a games writing workshop once, like a one-off thing, and they were talking about Twine and people using that as a sort of portfolio of their thing. And you,
Ooh.
for three very lucky pre-order people, they won a sort of special edition games thing. Do you want to say what's on that, or what you've made in terms of?
Oh yeah, so there's like a few games on there. Gosh, I can't even remember what I put on there, but it will be fun. I think there's another novella on there which is kind of like a Bluebeard's fairy tale like retelling, which is like quite fun. And yeah, I think that's like yeah, anyway, it will be fun. And if you come to the London launch, there will be more.
Oh yes. So
Um,
who's in London on Monday night, I think, isn't it 17th in Morocco Bound Bookshop, which is really cool. Um, yes, absolutely, absolutely go. I think you probably are. I hope you agree, Sayahada, that your question was answered in Kwan Ann's last answer. Sam was asked. Well, she said you said you were in the trenches while editing and laughed at that. Felt that deep. Yeah, I'm curious if any of it changed completely from your first draft.
yeah, I think the biggest change was probably the section with I really struggled for some reason with the capitalist ending of the book. Without giving away too much, there is a one bad ending in the book, I would say. Um, so I don't know why. I really struggled with that one, kind of like I think maybe because it goes against the Waiters like nature so much. But I kind of wanted to pay tribute to that like you have died ending in interactive and in other choose your own adventure books. So that was like probably the one that I struggled with the most. And then there were other little bits like there's also one where, you end up sort of like being consumed by, your hyperfixation on like a certain actress, and that sort of like takes you through different iterations of like watching a movie or like deciding not to watch a movie, and then, things go out with that. Yeah, that one it was like the central idea of that was really to kind of explore um I guess fan culture and like how people can hyperfixate on a certain thing. And for some, yeah, that was like quite tricky, and it went through several like evolutions before we kind of landed on something that wasn't too different in tone from the rest of the book.
Mm, Yeah, completely. I remember that. But it was amazing how many different like themes fit with this world that you've created just really naturally, like fan fixation. It felt completely normal and right that that could be a part of this waiter's psyche and of the story as a
Mm.
whole. Suze asked about editing the book. A question for me, but you sort of answered as well the editorial challenges with the interactive nature. I was just thinking about that definitely the sort of structural thing, isn't it? The joke about the donut, but that was true only in a few occasions, and that's what was so amazing, really, that these strands um, were so considered, and there were so few mistakes. I would say the main thing I sort of come from like a playwriting, uh, well, more recently a playwriting background, and I think motivations were the thing that we looked at a bit. The sort of, I think in that story strand you mentioned there, how you can have 11 stories and kind of be consistent, well, not necessarily consistent, but have a believable motivation for the character at each sort of strand. That oh, hang on, why?
Mm.
What? Yeah, there are a few instances where you're like, oh, why have they done that? And we just needed to build in a little bit more. But yeah, it was a remarkable feat, I think, what Kwan Ann delivered in terms of this ambitious book. Um,
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think during the editing process, especially, like, you asked a lot of questions that were sort of kind of like very much directed towards like character and then things like that. So, yeah, it was really fun to like work through it together and just kind of like, shape that part especially of the novel, which I felt was like the one that needed the most development in a sense as well. So, yeah, really happy with how I think that turned out in the end.
Me too. Um, Lovely. It's a question. Is there a link between your book and your background by Hieronymus Bosch?
Sadly, no. It's because like I don't really have a nice bookshelf at the back, so I was like, I need a large painting that, is also cool. So I chose this painting.
Um, I went I went so far the other way and put every copy that we have left of the Waiter in the Office standing up behind me. Which is to say that we've had to reprint because of the surge in demand. So it's really amazing. And do continue to order, and we will get it to you within a week or two. How long we got? I reckon we should do another reading. I had, please keep questions coming. Salma asked about the cassette thing. So that was a sort of special edition USB cassette that Kwan Ann made with loads of different things on it. So you plug it into a computer. Um, the formats that we are creating are the paperback novel and the audiobook and an ebook. Let's say both of those are in post production. Um, uh, my other question, because the other thing is one of the other real sort of prevalent themes is that kind of impending apocalypse as well. I think we felt when we read it, it mirrored the climate emergency. I think it also kind of mirrored that powerlessness well, a lot of us felt during the pandemic. I guess that sort of starting to go about your lives without really knowing when or if you might get struck down by something that was very scary. So yeah, I wanted to ask were those influences on the writing because I imagine that was sort of started not too long after that. But also, what were you trying to explore in writing that kind of an apocalyptic situation?
Yeah, I mean like of course, you're obviously right. It was the isolation of like the pandemic and like kind of like things that sort of like limbo between like things kind of getting back to normal but also like there's a lot of shit happening at the same time. um and yeah, climate emergency, that I mean like it's so depressing every time you start a conversation with that because it's like it feels like there's almost nothing that an individual can do, and it like the scale that it require like that is needed to be done is like it's quite depressing to feel that sense of like nothing is happening. Um, But I was also kind of like researching around that, and in the blog post, I sort of referenced this idea of like a slow apocalypse, where it's like, humans are really trained to like react quickly to like situations that are happening like immediately or even sort of like imminently, but we're really bad at like reacting to things that are happening slowly or things that we see like far in the future kind of things, simply because of like how we experience time and like things like that. So yeah, um, I guess it was a little bit of like the depression of like being confronted with all of that, and also the knowledge that like capitalism and greed is like to blame for like a lot of these things happening in the first place. So the malls in a sense are, not only climate, emergency, but like the representation of like mouths is kind of like how uh the earth is being like swallowed up in like, chunks for like mining, all that kind of stuff, or like resource resource sort of like dwindling kind of like things. So yeah, that was the main thought behind that.
Mm. There's so much going on. I can't believe it's actually only come out 120 pages. There's yeah, a huge amount to get your teeth and your head stuck into. Uh, do you have another passage we can read, and then as we
Yeah.
just towards the finish, and I'll spotlight you
Yep.
again.
So this one that I'm gonna read from is a sort of like a little bit more about the drudgery of like the job, being on the job, and it's also a little bit about the actress that I mentioned earlier, and kind of like this idea of like hyperfixation, like projecting yourself onto like somebody else. When you next look up, the sky is dark. You've been staring at the screen for hours, and a headache has begun to develop behind your eyes. When you close them, you find that the actress's image has been burnt into your eyelids, her outline a blur. A timer alert pops up on the app. Day one of your shift is almost over. Your supervisor messages to say that the duration of the house sitting job has been extended, and you'll have to stay here for 4 days instead of the advertised 2. You'll earn double credits for your trouble. You look around. Is the owner coming back? How many waiters have stayed in this house already? You curl up on the couch and go to sleep. You wake up to a message reminding you to water the plants and not touch the client's things. You eat a packet of nutrition jelly and settle in for another day of stalking the actress. Clicking on several questionable links, you manage to download a very grainy version of one of her early films. It's a slasher version of Pygmalion mashed with the idea of AI, with the actress playing the robot that slowly develops a bloodthirsty consciousness, intent on executing all involved in her creation. Despite the bad writing, you can't take your eyes off her whenever she appears on screen. There's something about her that feels familiar, and you are not sure if this is the result of the parasocial relationship you're developing, or if something is being jogged from your lost memories. You try to imagine walking with her, eating with her, driving with her, sitting across from her, talking to her, studying each line and curve of her face until you're almost certain that you do know her. A thump startles you. You go to investigate, but it's just a package that's been pushed through the front door. You nudge it to one side with the rest of the mail. Your phone chirps. It's your supervisor, reminding you that you could be earning extra credits by liking and commenting on the company articles in the app. Another day passes. The morning of the third day dawns, and you feel extremely well rested, though rather restless. You start poking around the house, opening drawers and examining the fridge. The expiry date on nearly all of the items has long passed, which seemed strange. How long has the client been away? You wonder if the client has actually been eaten up by a mall, and no one is left to cancel the waiter service. The company will go on sending people to this address until the client's bank account is drained. Your supervisor messages you again. Someone's been found to replace you in the house. You're relieved to be finishing this assignment, as the pay for house sitting is low, and you want to try and earn back the credits you lost in the donut queue. Your new options: you can go to another house and wait for a package to be delivered, or you can wait on hold in a phone call to a bank. The third option, which offers the fewest credits, is to queue for tickets to a secret film screening in Shepherd's Bush. That sounds a little more interesting. You accept the third task. I'll leave it here.
Thank you, Kwan Ann. What we really should have done is uh, have some kind of voting system and got to one of the interactive bits, but maybe we'll keep that for our live Birmingham launch and
Yes,
have an
that'll be
audience
fun.
vote about where to go next. Thank you for those brilliant readings. I think I have two more questions. One I always ask, and one I'm going to take the opportunity to ask because I don't think we ever would really. So it feels very rare at book launch to be able or willing to talk about the ending of the book. Um, but since there are 11 different endings, I don't think we'll be spoiling too much. So I'm going to take a very rare opportunity and ask you: do you have your own favorite ending? Is there one that you particularly like or you're proud of? Or...
It's so difficult to say, but like I think actually the one where the well it is at the end of the book, but it's the one where they throw their phone into the mall into the mall and they're free, you know. I feel like that's like the real freedom of the entire book because they get to like sort of like become their own person in the end rather than, you know, either like take somebody's place or like, you know, all these other endings. So that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one? If I'm curious as well.
I think that could be one. There's one I won't spoil too much because one ending's fine to spoil, but the others, I think one with in the child's bedroom. I'll say no more.
Mm.
I like that. I like the sports hall ones. I basically like the darker ones and the one that you chose as well. Uh, but yeah,
Somebody somebody who read the book before this said there are no good endings. They're all bad. Okay. It
well,
depends how you see it, but okay.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think there's some hopeful ones, and a lot of them as
Yeah.
well. It's sort of categorized by maybe it's not an end, and you don't know. And in the spirit of the book, you probably could. It doesn't feel wholly inappropriate to go back and to explore another path because yes, perhaps in
Yeah.
another writing of this book, it would drift into the start of another story after the end of another. Um, and then my final question then is, yeah, it's just really lovely to know what you're working on now and next as a writer. What can we look forward to?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess something coming out next year. And then what I'm working on right now, I'll share a little bit, is about it's about like the nature of writing, I guess, and competition between like writers. So, it's gonna be another strange and gothic tale.
That sounds good. We very much look forward to reading that. I will wrap it up then. One thing I will do is I'll drop the link to the book. Expect some of you have it, perhaps some of you don't. As I say, we're really overwhelmed and grateful for the orders that we've received. So please order a copy, order two, order one for someone else. As I said, very excitingly, we got some funding to record audiobooks, and this will be our first one ever. So you can pre-order that through Webshop. We'll get a really good deal doing the paperback and the audiobook, and we'll send that to you when it's ready in the next couple of weeks. The other link I like to post, if you'll forgive me, is our newsletter. If you've enjoyed this event or kind of Kwan Ann's work and interested in what we do and our next submission windows, perhaps that would be lovely. And the best place for you to get that is by joining our newsletter. If you're social medially inclined, please do consider sharing photos or links or thoughts or reviews of the book. We've seen some lovely ones posted today, and it really, really does make a difference to a small press and a debut writer. So yes, I think that's it. So just thank you so much again to Kwan Ann for trusting us with your
Thank you,
work
James. Yeah,
and for sharing it. And thank you everyone who's joined us tonight. And I will unceremoniously boot us all out of this room.
cool. Thanks,
Good
guys.
night, good night
Bye.
everyone.